Most staff problems in hospitality do not come from bad people, they come from unclear communication. That might sound simple, but it's the truth that changed my entire approach to leadership. Lack of clarity creates tension. Lack of clarity creates resentment. Lack of clarity creates confusion and emotional friction and unnecessary conflict. And here is the real cost of unclear communication. If your team is confused, you cannot expect consistency. If they don't understand your standards, they cannot uphold them. If they don't understand your expectations, they cannot meet them. Clarity is the bridge between what you want and what your team actually delivers. And until that bridge is strong, everything else on top of it will wobble. This episode is about laying that foundation properly. Welcome to the LEADWELL channel, where we explore the inner world of leadership, well-being, and what it means to build a business that does not break you. My name's Trevor. I run a multi-award-winning restaurant and cocktail bar, and I consult with hospitality leaders who want to build a calm, steady form of leadership that does not drain their well-being. But I wasn't always calm and I wasn't always clear. In the first few years of Occo Rocco, I believed I was communicating well. I thought I was explaining myself. I thought I was giving good direction. But looking back, I can see how much of what I said never really landed the way I thought it did. We had a large team in the early days. The building was huge and we overstaffed the management level because we wanted to set the business up for potential expansion. The dream was that if we built a strong structure, we could grow into multiple venues. Spoiler alert, COVID arrived and stopped that bang in its tracks. But the bigger problem was not the building and it was not the ambition, it was the communication. We would hold meetings with managers and say, this is how we want something done, please roll it out to the team. And we assumed that the message would ripple down through the ranks. We assumed that everyone would understand it in the same way. And we assumed that the meaning would stay intact. But that is not what happened, because what actually happened was more like Chinese whispers. The message changed slightly with each person it went through. By the time it reached the floor staff, it barely resembled what we had intended. Sometimes the message didn't even make it past the first layer of management, not because they're lazy or careless, but because they were overwhelmed or afraid to admit that they did not understand what we were asking. And some people wanted so badly to please us that they said they understood and then walked away and implemented something completely different. Communication was not just broken, it was invisible. It was assumed but not confirmed. Everything from table scripts to cleaning procedures to reporting to process changes. None of it was consistent, none of it was united. And because communication was weak, consistency was impossible. The culture suffered, the standards drifted, the energy dipped. And on my side of the fence, resentment slowly started to grow. I felt let down and I felt confused. Both sides blamed the other, and all of it was rooted in one thing: unclear communication. But here's the important part. This is not just a business problem. This became a personal problem, because when communication falls apart, leadership becomes incredibly heavy. I was constantly repeating myself, constantly fixing things, constantly stepping in because it felt easier to do it myself. I thought I was being efficient, but what I was actually doing was digging my own hole of burnout. The weight of unspoken expectations sat on my shoulders like a constant pressure. Every misunderstanding felt personal, and every inconsistency felt like a failure. And every repeated instruction fed the voice in my head that said, no one gets it, I have to do everything myself. It affected my mood, it affected my patience, it affected my relationships, and it affected my entire sense of well-being. And it all came from a simple truth. I thought I was being clear, but my team were guessing. The moment I realized that was the moment everything changed, because the more clearly I communicated, the less I had to repeat myself. The less I had to rescue situations, the fewer fires I had to put out, and the calmer my leadership became. In this episode, I want to show you how to communicate clearly so your team knows exactly what you expect, trusts your direction, and feels confident in their roles. Clarity removes confusion, clarity removes resentment, and clarity removes unnecessary stress. You'll learn how to deliver feedback that builds trust rather than tension, why miscommunication is behind most staff issues, how emotional regulation protects your communication, and how daily clarity rituals keep your whole team aligned and consistent. By the end of this episode, you'll have a framework that makes communication smoother, calmer, and far more effective. If you ever find yourself repeating instructions or getting frustrated because people don't seem to understand what you meant, I want you to pause and take the free business and wellness quiz below. It helps you identify where your communication rhythm may be slipping and what small changes that could free up hours of your time and a huge amount of your emotional energy. You carry a lot and you deserve the tools and the support to carry it well. Why communication fails in hospitality. Communication does not fail because people don't care. It fails because hospitality is chaotic by nature. Here are the most common reasons communication breaks down. Instructions are given quickly without context, staff feel embarrassed to ask for clarification, people interpret the same sentence differently, leaders communicate from stress rather than calm, details get passed down verbally and become distorted, and leaders assume understanding instead of checking it. Most mistakes do not come from laziness or carelessness, they come from confusion. And confusion grows in silence. It grows when expectations are unspoken. It grows when leaders assume understanding and staff assume that they will figure it out later. If communication is rushed, clarity is lost. And if clarity is lost, consistency is impossible. 2. The difference between leading and informing. Many leaders believe they are communicating when they are actually only informing. Informing means do this. Leading means here is what to do, here is what good looks like, and this is why it matters. There are 3 layers to communication that most leaders skip: the instruction, the expectation, and the purpose. When you skip any of these, frustration builds on both sides. Leaders feel let down, staff feel confused, and over time that becomes resentment. Most leaders think staff are not listening, but in reality staff often do not know what the leader actually wanted because the instruction alone is not enough. Clarity is built at the level of explanation, not at the level of instruction. Number 3, feedback that builds trust, not tension. Feedback is one of the biggest causes of tension in hospitality teams, not because people can't handle honesty, but because honesty is usually delivered poorly. That is why I use a simple method called calm, direct, honest. Calm is where you do not give feedback when you are emotional. Regulate your own state before you speak. Direct, say the actual thing. Don't dance around the point, don't hint, and don't use vague language. And honest is to say the truth without emotional charge. No sarcasm, no passive-aggressive tone, no resentment. Most leaders reverse this by accident. They speak from frustration, not calm. They talk around the issue instead of being direct, and the truth gets delivered through an emotional tone rather than clarity. Calm, direct, honest feedback builds trust. It removes ambiguity. It shows staff exactly what needs adjusting without making them feel attacked. People can handle honesty, and what they can't handle is inconsistency in tone. Number 4, emotional regulation for leaders. Clarity collapses the moment that emotion takes over. Your team do not just hear your words, they feel your energy. If you communicate from stress, impatience, or burnout, your clarity disappears, your tone sharpens, your presence becomes unpredictable, and your message will get lost. In series 3, I spoke about my panic attacks and the emotional overload that I carried for years. At that time, my communication was reactive. It was rushed, it was inconsistent, and it was fueled by anxiety rather than intention. My morning breathwork changed everything, and it did not just calm my nerves, it changed the whole tone of my leadership. So when I communicate from calm, I communicate with clarity, and when I communicate with clarity, my team feels safe. Poor emotional regulation leads to snappy comments, passive-aggressive tones, avoidance or difficult conversations, mixed messages, and unpredictable responses. One technique that changed my communication is incredibly simple. Pause, breath, then speak. Take 3 slow breaths, then deliver the message. That 30 seconds changed the entire emotional climate of a conversation. Number 5, how miscommunication creates unnecessary conflict. Most conflict in hospitality is avoidable. It's not personality-based, it's clarity-based. Here are the most common scenarios. A staff member makes a decision without understanding the bigger picture. Managers interpret your instructions differently. A staff member believes they're doing it correctly but frustrates leadership because no expectations were shared. Leaders expect mind reading instead of speaking clearly. This creates a cycle of confusion, frustration, defensiveness, and resentment. People do not fall out because they disagree. They fall out because they assume. Clear communication removes guesswork, and guesswork is what usually causes conflict. Number 6, daily clarity rituals that keep a team aligned. One of the most powerful ways to improve communication is not through bigger speeches or longer meetings, it's through simple daily rituals that create rhythm and predictability. Leadership feels heavier when communication is inconsistent. When the tone changes daily, when expectations shift without explanation, your team are not just responding to what you say, they're responding to the rhythm that you set. Daily clarity rituals create emotional safety. Everyone knows where they stand, everyone knows what the plan is, everyone knows how to align their efforts. These rituals do not need to be long, they just need to be consistent. For example, you could do a morning briefing. This is not a lecture, it's not a motivational monologue, it's just a simple, clear alignment conversation. Every morning ask, what does success look like today? What needs special attention? What could disrupt the flow? Who needs support? Does everyone understand the plan? The important part is that last question. Not does everyone agree, but does everybody understand? Agreement is passive, understanding is active. You'd be surprised how many problems vanish just by taking 2 minutes each morning to ensure that everyone knows what the day requires. You could try a mid-shift micro-check-in. This is like a 30-second moment, a small pulse check, a quick alignment point. It can sound like, how's everyone feeling? What is working well? Does anyone need anything from me right now? As leaders, we often assume that silence means that everything is okay, but silence usually means the team is coping quietly while tension builds behind the scenes. A micro check-in diffuses tension before it grows. It catches miscommunication early. It reassures the team that leadership is present and supportive. You could try an end of shift debrief. This is where teams grow, not through criticism and not through blame, but through reflection. A simple structure works best. What went well today? What needs adjusting? What needs repeating tomorrow? The goal is not to review what went wrong. The goal is to align the standards for the next day. When your team hears that message daily, they start to regulate themselves. They start to self-correct. They start to anticipate what good looks like. Consistency creates leadership without force. Clarity creates leadership without pressure. When you repeat these rituals every day, you reduce the emotional load on your team, but even more importantly, you reduce the emotional load on yourself. Number 7, using systems to support communication. Clear communication is not just verbal, it's structural. You cannot expect consistency if the only form of communication is spoken. Verbal communication disappears. It gets forgotten, it gets distorted, it gets interpreted differently by each person. If you want consistent standards, you need consistent systems. That means things like checklists, service expectations, cleaning standards, opening and closing routines, table scripts, training documents. Systems are not there to control people. Systems are there to protect everyone from confusion. The more organized your structure, the less emotional friction your team experiences and the easier your leadership becomes. When we first built proper operating procedures at Rocco, it felt like a massive project, but it saved us hours every week. Instead of repeating myself, I could point someone to the documentation standard instead of adjusting the same process repeatedly. I could adjust the structure once and the whole team followed it. Systems allow clarity to be consistent even when you're not present. And here is something most leaders miss. Structure does not replace leadership. Structure supports leadership. The clearer your systems, the calmer your leadership becomes because the emotional weight shifts from you to the framework that you've built. Number 8, communication and the direct with clarity pillar. Communication is the heart of the direct with clarity pillar in my LEADWELL framework. Clear communications is what connects your expectations, your standards, your vision, your values, your team, and your emotional well-being. Direct with clarity is not about being strict. It's not about being harsh. It's not about being controlling. It's about being clear, calm, and consistent. Let's break this down through the lens of the LEADWELL pillars. L is look inward. You can't communicate clearly if you're overwhelmed. You can't give direction if your mind is chaotic. When you look inward, you learn to check your emotional state before you speak. You stop communicating from frustration and you stop projecting stress onto your team. Clear communication begins with clear self-awareness. E is establish rhythm. Daily clarity rituals create rhythm. Morning briefings, micro check-ins, end of shift debriefs. Rhythm reduces anxiety, rhythm builds confidence, rhythm protects the team from confusion. When your communication has rhythm, your team feels safe, your standards feel solid, your leadership feels predictable in the best possible ways. A is align your energy. When communication is unclear, you spend your entire day repeating yourself, fixing miscommunications, mediating tension, and firefighting problems. When communication is clear, you spend your day leading, planning, mentoring, thinking strategically. Clarity frees your energy and it gives you space to be the leader instead of a rescuer. And D, direct with clarity. This pillar is about giving direction without emotional pressure. It's about being specific about what you want, being clear about what good it looks like, and creating a culture where people understand the purpose behind what they do. Direct with clarity turns leadership into a shared responsibility, and it turns staff into owners of their role. And it turns communication from pressure into partnership. So let's bring everything together. Communication is the foundation of every healthy team. Most frustration does not come from poor performance, it comes from unclear expectations. Calm, direct, honest feedback builds trust because it removes emotional turbulence and creates clarity. Emotional regulation is essential for leadership because tone is just as important as content. Clarity collapses the moment emotion takes over. Daily clarity rituals keep the team aligned. Morning briefings, mid-shift check-ins, end-of-shift debriefs. These are small habits that create enormous stability. Systems support communication. SOPs, checklists, training structures. These protect your team from confusion and protects you from burnout. And finally, clear communication is the heart of the direct with clarity pillar. It makes leadership easier, it protects your energy, it protects your culture, and it removes unnecessary emotional strain. And it allows you to lead without breaking yourself. When communication becomes clear, everything else becomes lighter. I used to think I was clear, and I used to think I was explaining myself. I used to think my team were understanding what I meant, but really they were guessing, and I was assuming. I thought I was communicating well, but I was communicating quickly, from stress, from impatience, from anxiety, and from burnout. When I slowed down and I regulated myself, when I clarified my standards, when I built systems, and when I added daily rituals, everything changed. I became calmer, my team became more confident, the culture became more stable, and the business became far more easier to lead. If you want a better team, start with clearer communication. Not harsher communication, not louder communication, clearer communication. Your team want to do well. They want to understand. They want to get it right. They just need you to show them what clarity actually looks like. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like and a subscribe. It helps me, it helps the channel, and it helps people like us find content that really matters. And as always, I'd love to remind you that you matter too. Don't forget that.